Where does your favorite NFL team's offense rank entering the 2023 NFL season? What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch here of the BLV, here to give you my NFL offense rankings entering 2023. From the worst, number 32, to the best, number 1. This is more of a projection of this year than it is based on last year, but I'm taking talent, scheme, offensive production from 2022 all into account for this list entering 2023. If that sounds good, don't forget to spike the like button and subscribe for more NFL rankings just like this. Let's go. Kicking off my 2023 offense rankings at number 32, the Arizona Cardinals. There's one big reason the Arizona Cardinals are the worst offense in the NFL entering 2023. It's because their quarterback, Kyler Murray, the engine of the offense, the playmaker of the offense, the distributor of the offense, is injured and will likely miss a majority of the season. Without Kyler Murray, this offense does not work. And yeah, they have Colt McCoy, a veteran quarterback. Potentially they go with him to start the season. But it's not going to be the same. What Kyler Murray is able to do with his feet, escaping pressure, buying time for his offensive line, extending plays for his receivers, especially in an offense that's post DeAndre Hopkins, that would have been so critical for the success of this offense. The offensive line, I don't think is bad by any means, but I don't think it's great either. I like Humphries, Paris Johnson Jr. as a rookie. We'll see how he performs. Hernandez is coming off his best season of his career, in my opinion. So there's some bright spots for sure within the offensive line. I do like McBride as a young tight end up-and-comer. I'm not sold on Rondale Moore taking that step as a number 2 potentially slot receiver type. Marquise Brown, we've seen kind of struggle as a number 1 receiver in this league, and their run game is certainly not one of the better ones in the NFL, led by James Conner. Michael Wilson out of Stanford, I believe, could be an interesting rookie pickup, but I don't expect a major impact from day one. I just don't think post Cliff Kingsbury and his kind of creative side offensively, they had a very unique air raid type of system that I thought gave them an advantage offensively. Now I'm not quite sure the direction of their offense this year. No Kyler Murray, a lack of a running game. I think this is probably the safest unit to rank low on a list. That's really hard to project which units are going to be the absolute worst in the NFL. The second worst offense entering 2023, I have the Houston Texans. But I do want to spin this in a positive direction. And you're probably saying, Mitch, this is the 31st best offense out of 32. How can you spin this positively? I rank the Texans at 31 mostly due to their recent past. They have been, without a doubt, really, the worst offense in the NFL over the past 2 to 3 years, period. And last year, it was really no different when you look at them statistically speaking. This year, they've made quite a few improvements from the offensive scheme, which is going to take more of a San Francisco Shanahan approach, to the quarterback, where I'm a big fan of CJ Stroud. I think he's going to be a future star in this league at quarterback, but he's a rookie and it's going to take time for sure, especially when he's going from Ohio State, where his receivers at Ohio State are probably more talented than the ones that are at Houston. Okay, John Mechie's coming off missing his rookie season, so this is basically his rookie season. Nico Collins has yet to prove that he's that dude. Tank Dell is a rookie. Robert Woods is at the end of his career, so they don't really have a number 1 or maybe even number 2 quality receiver, at least proven. The tight end position, Dalton Schultz, they signed to a 1-year contract. He should provide a security blanket. And what I do like about the receiving core is there's many names and many players and many skill sets to at least throw at this position and see what clicks and what works for young CJ Stroud. The offensive line, I think, is the strength of the unit with 2 very good tackles, an improved interior featuring Shaq Mason now, and then also they drafted a 2nd-round center. And then, of course, you got Dameon Pierce in the backfield along with Devin Singletary from the Buffalo Bills. So I think there's a lot of improvement, but I just want to see how far it takes them because they really don't have any elite playmakers. And they definitely have a young quarterback who is going to see some struggles in his first season. At number 30, the Indianapolis Colts offense. The Colts offense is a very tricky one to rank because I feel they have the potential to do something extremely elite. And for that, I have to give them bonus points. But how many bonus points can I give them? I believe that their run game has the potential to be dynamic, especially once Anthony Richardson gets under center. With Anthony Richardson as that huge quarterback who can also run like the wind, that brings a dimension to an offense that just creates so much trouble for defenses when defending the run game that already features a powerhouse like Quentin Nelson on the offensive line and a home run threat in the backfield like Jonathan Taylor. So I feel the run game here, if this offense is a lot better than 30th, it's because this sets up everything else to be successful. The receivers, I think, are pretty good if they had a competent quarterback, but with a rookie there, I don't think any of them are going to make Anthony Richardson look special as a very raw passer early on. And they're probably not going to be very productive at all in the passing game. They're going to be a very run-heavy team, which usually doesn't lead to a ton of points. I like Pierce, especially entering his 2nd season. And obviously, Michael Pittman Jr. is a baller, but I just don't know with Richardson throwing them the rock that they're going to be able to consistently drop back and pass the football at a high completion percentage and a high rate and very successfully. So point blank period, I believe in Shane Steichen. I believe that the offensive line will bounce back because of his coaching. I think they'll run the ball well, but their pass game will probably be the worst in the NFL this year. At number 29, the Tennessee Titans offense led by the king, Derrick Henry. And this could be Ryan Tannehill's last season as the Titans signal caller. I just don't love the offensive line for the Tennessee Titans. And when we look back to the Titans and their success offensively around 2019, 2020, and even 2021, they were built off of a strong running game, and that was because of Derrick Henry and the offensive line. And I just don't know about the offensive line. It is very suspect, especially when it comes to drop back passing situations. How are they going to be able to protect Ryan Tannehill? And then when you combine that problem with a lack of certified ballers at wide receiver, I do believe Treylon Burks will have a nice year this year with a potential breakout ceiling. I really like the tight end position for the Tennessee Titans. They have one of the best young, up-and-coming, just difference-making, yards after catch tight ends in football. And I don't know about the rest of the receiving core. We will have to see. Derrick Henry, as long as he's still Derrick Henry, will provide a spark, will allow them to grind out football games in the fourth quarter, will keep them competitive on the ground. But I'm extremely concerned about the traditional drop back passing game. And I think I put them at 29 above some of these other units, mostly because I have faith in Derrick Henry and I have faith in Ryan Tannehill. He's shown that he's a solid quarterback in the NFL. even if he's not great, he can provide you a nice floor at the quarterback position, which some of the teams behind them simply don't have right now. So I have them near the bottom of the list. I don't have a lot of upside for this unit, but I hope that they prove me wrong. At number 28, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense. The Bucs offense is really, really interesting. It's a year post Tom Brady where you would think that a team that loses Tom Brady would drop off the face of the planet at the quarterback position and offensively from a production standpoint. But when you look at last year, the Bucs were kind of a strange offense. They threw more than anybody in the NFL for the past 2 seasons. They've been so reliant on their 45-year-old quarterback to make throws and plays, and they had one of the historically awful run games in NFL history. But most of the issues and the problems with the offense while Tom Brady was there are now removed. Byron Leftwich is no longer the offensive coordinator. He was absolutely horrible last year, and I think he had a major impact on why the run game specifically was so bad. And then the offensive line on paper looks deeper and it looks better, and Donovan Smith, the left tackle, was so terrible. But there are definitely question marks there with young players in starting spots, such as right tackle and also guard. So Tampa Bay still has Chris Godwin. They still have Mike Evans. They even have Russell Gage. I like what Cade Otton gave them at tight end last year, and I think he could improve in his sophomore campaign. Rachaad White is a decent back, but certainly not upper echelon. And in year 2, maybe he takes a step forward. I certainly believe the run game will be improved. I think the play calling will be better. I think the scheme will be better. But with Baker Mayfield at the helm, compared to Tom Brady, there's just so much you're missing from a mental capacity, from an accuracy standpoint, from a consistency standpoint, that this is going to be one of the worst offenses in football, even if they still have a pretty awesome wide receiver duo and some talented players such as Tristan Wirfs. I have to rank them pretty low on the list. At number 27, the Washington Commanders offense. The Commanders offense is one that I could certainly be wrong about with my placement on the list. But when I think of their ranking and I think of how I may see them perform, I kind of view them in 2 different lights, because I like a lot of the players on Washington's offense, but I can't necessarily justify ranking them super high because Sam Howell has only played 1 game in the NFL regular season. I don't know how he's going to look in the NFL for a sustained period of time. Now, you could argue, Mitch, they still have Jacoby Brissett. You know that, right? Like, if he's bad, but like, what's the ceiling with Jacoby Brissett? We know he can be decent and competent, but what's the ceiling there, right? Especially on a team without the Cleveland offensive line. The receivers I like a lot. I think they have a super underrated receiver group led by Terry McLaurin. Jahan Dotson in year 2 should have a big jump, and I thought he showed a lot of flashes last year. And Curtis Samuel is one of the best kind of wild card type of players that you can move around, play him at running back, play him at slot, give him the ball in jet sweeps and do that type of thing with him. Tight end should be a healthier position for them. Offensive line, I don't think is great, but I don't think it's awful either. And running back is kind of the same. So without an elite running game or an elite offensive line, I just don't see massive upside, despite me really liking some of the weapons and me really liking the addition of Eric Bieniemy as offensive coordinator. So that's why I have them at this spot on the list. At number 26, the Carolina Panthers offense. Carolina Panthers offense is one that is a little frustrating to think about, because I think there's a lot of potential for Bryce Young in year 1. Like, I think the offensive line is perfectly made for him to succeed. They have 2 awesome tackles. I think Ekwonu will only get better in year number 2. And then the offensive line overall is really, really solid. They can run the football on basically anybody with basically any running back, but they went out of their way to pay Miles Sanders, who they clearly like a lot. I'm not the biggest fan of Miles Sanders at this point, but I do believe that with this offensive line and with Frank Reich calling the plays, he will have a successful season. I like the addition of Hayden Hurst as a secondary option in the receiving game as their new tight end. And I know they like some of the other tight ends like Tommy Tremble as well. The wide receiving core is really the big question mark. Like, I'd be so much more in on Bryce Young as a rookie and this offense in his rookie season if I was a bigger fan of what they added to the receiving core. Adam Thielen, I think, will be a reliable option, but he is just lacking a lot of gas in the tank right now. He has very little explosion, and he's really going all off of savviness at this point. DJ Chark is talented, but extremely inconsistent and extremely unreliable. He does not stay on the football field. Terrace Marshall could break out, but we've seen very little from him so far in the NFL. And then they also added a rookie as well to the mix. So I don't know, man. Like, people are expecting the rookie or for Terrace Marshall to break out, and it's hard to count on. So I think this is a unit with good coaching, promising quarterback play, a strong offensive line, but just lacks any sort of real phenomenal weaponry for me to get super pumped about this offense being any better than average. At number 25, the Green Bay Packers offense. The Packers offense, I think, is capped because they have a lot of young players. And that's kind of a weird thing to say, because usually you would think about young players having high ceilings because we don't necessarily know how good or bad they are. But I think when you have so many young players on the same offense, it's really hard to be consistent as an offense, especially in the passing game. Jordan Love is now the new quarterback, who you guys know I like a lot, and I do think he'll be very surprising to some people, especially non-Packer fans. I think he is accurate. I think his timing is great and fantastic. I think he's got a very good arm, and I think he's got underrated mobility. The offensive line in Green Bay is always very good, and they got great depth. Their run game will be very strong, and they will try to run the ball to kind of pace the game. So they won't be a team that's super high scoring, but that's not necessarily how you should judge their offense. You should judge their offense based on, do they turn the football over? Do they control the game through their offense? Do they create big plays in the passing game? And that's where Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs come in off of Jordan Love's play action. But then you've got other guys like Reed and Musgrave and some of the tight ends they drafted where it's like, they're all rookies. Like, are these guys going to be able to contribute? I love Christian Watson. I think he's going to have an even bigger year in year two. I think Doubs will improve, but you're counting on like second-year players to be your premier players, and it's just hard for me. So I have them at number 25 on my list. At number 24, the Los Angeles Rams offense. The Rams offense is a very tricky rank because I could see some people ranking them much higher due to the fact that they have Sean McVay as the play caller, Matthew Stafford as the quarterback, and Cooper Kupp at wide receiver. And that's all people really need to rank them in the top 20. And I get it. I understand it. Like, I'm not going to argue it. But I'm thinking about multiple things here. So we've got the offensive line, which I don't think is very good. I think the offensive line is going to put them in some bad situations occasionally when they try to run the ball on early downs, setting up third down and longs where Matthew Stafford is going to get cranked. He is going to get hit. He is going to get potentially hurt. And that is my concern. If Matthew Stafford's not in this lineup, they are a very bad offense. And no matter who they have, Sean McVay as the play caller, he's great. But like, without Matthew Stafford, this thing doesn't work. And then teams are going to be able to focus all their energy on Cooper Kupp because the number 2 receiver has no speed. It's Van Jefferson, okay? He's going to catch a lot of passes, probably a decent PPR, end of the draft type guy, like probably like 70 catches from him this year, especially if Kupp goes out of a game. But I mean, you're counting on Tutu Atwell to step up as your number 3. So, and then Tyler Higbee's there, but again, he's not super explosive either. So it's just an offense that lacks explosion. It's Cooper Kupp, it's Matthew Stafford, it's Cam Akers in the run game, and you're gonna have to have a wizardry season from Sean McVay for this unit to be anywhere close to what it used to be. At number 23, the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. The Pittsburgh Steelers offense is a wild card for 2023. How much can Kenny Pickett improve? Did they add enough around him? Did they improve the offensive line enough? Which I think is really the biggest question. How will the rookie left tackle be? Samalu comes in from the Philadelphia Eagles. Will Pickens take a step forward as a true number one receiver? Will Deontay Johnson have a little bit of a bounce back season? Is Allen Robinson dust? Is Najee Harris just the slowest running back in the league? Or was it the offensive line? So there's a lot of questions with the Pittsburgh Steelers. One thing I will say about the Steelers is their efficiency metrics from last year were extremely surprising when I looked at it. They ranked a lot higher, like league average in a lot of these metrics. And I thought they were closer to the bottom of the league on offense, just based on the eye test. Because, Kenny Pickett, I think he threw the same amount of touchdowns as interceptions or something close to that. So whenever that happens, you have to wonder about offensive production. I'm not a huge fan of the play caller. I do think the run game has been really bad for the last 3 or 4 years, it feels like. The receiving core is pretty talented. The tight end is very, very good. And the running back position, I think, has deceptive depth. I really like Warren a lot. And I think the offensive line is the best on paper entering a season that it has been for quite some time. So I have a lot of intrigue towards the Steelers offense. I think Pickett should have a good year. I don't think they're going to be fantastic, but I definitely could see them being around the average type offense that if they get that out of their offense and they get a typical Steelers defense, they'll be a very competent team in 2023. At number 22, the Chicago Bears offense. Now, many of you are probably sitting there saying, Mitch, don't you hate Justin Fields? Why are they ranked this high? Why are they not 29th? And the answer is, I don't hate Justin Fields, first of all. I think he's extremely overrated because I don't know what the propaganda is doing to this guy, but it just makes me dislike him because it's just he was so bad as a passer. But you have to look at the rest of the offense and what they've been able to do to support Justin Fields. And really, when you're looking at it, if Justin Fields is not successful with the group around him, then he's in trouble. Look at the offense they have supported Justin Fields with. And really, your opinion on this offense should depend on what you think of Justin Fields. And for me, I think he's an awesome athlete who can really run, and I think their run game is going to be a problem this year. But their passing game will be extremely inconsistent, and that's why I have them at number 22. The offensive line is way better than anyone is giving them credit for. On paper, it's very talented. They have Darnell Wright, who's one of my favorite tackles in the draft. They have Nate Davis, who's an absolute mauler. Whitehair's very solid. Tevin Jenkins played really well last year. And then Braxton Jones, I believe, is the second-year tackle who really took huge strides. So the offensive line's very solid and very good in the run game. The running backs I like a lot. I think Roschon Johnson will contribute as a rookie, but I love Foreman, and Herbert's one of the most efficient runners in football. Kmet's a competent tight end. They brought in Robert Tonyan as a backup who knows this system well. A lot of it comes from Green Bay. The receiving core is pretty fast and dynamic, like Darnell Mooney and DJ Moore on the outside. So the Bears have all the pieces for Fields to be successful. It really comes down to, can he improve as a passer? That will dictate their ceiling. I think they'll surprise a lot of people, though, just because they're so dynamic on the ground that they'll score a lot of points that way. At number 21, the New Orleans Saints offense. The Saints offense, I don't think is special in the run or the pass game, but they're one of these offenses that's very solid and really doesn't have any weaknesses. Derek Carr, can he bounce back from his last season with the Raiders? I tend to lean towards he'll be a little bit better. I'm not going to say he's going to be a lead or anything like that, but I could see him returning to the top 20 of quarterbacks in the NFL. The offensive line is pretty competent. It's not fantastic. It's not what it used to be with Teron Armstead and Ryan Ramczyk, but you still got Ryan Ramczyk, and you got a pretty good offensive, especially pass protecting offensive line that will keep Derek Carr protected. Where he struggles is with pressure. Alvin Kamara probably won't have a very long suspension, but they brought in Jamal Williams. They also brought in a rookie running back to complement and to replace potentially. I think the tight ends are extremely underrated. Jawan Johnson, Taysom Hill doing his thing. And then can Michael Thomas play some games? That would be nice, but they already have Chris Olave and pretty good depth at the receiver position as well. So the play calling isn't what it used to be with Sean Payton. The quarterback position isn't what it used to be with Drew Brees. And the offensive line isn't what it used to be. But none of it is bad, especially if Michael Thomas plays and Chris Olave takes a step forward and Alvin Kamara is on the field. This could be an offense that is pretty darn tough to stop. At number 20, the Denver Broncos offense. The Broncos offense last year was absolutely pathetic, but they go from pathetic to Peyton, which is a big swing. Last year, they had the worst third down offense in the NFL, and I think a lot of that had to do with the drop back passing game, Russell Wilson, but also the running game. And I think that's the biggest thing that's going to be improved this year for the Denver Broncos. I actually think Sean Payton is going to get to running the ball and actually taking the ball out of Russell Wilson's hands to make Russell Wilson a more efficient quarterback. That's what I believe. I think hopefully Javonte Williams can be their lead guy and be healthy enough to do so. But either way, we've seen Sean Payton be successful with a good offensive line, which the Broncos low-key do have. If you look at the names, they signed a couple guys for big money. And they've got an up-and-coming tight end in Dulcich, who's very athletic. I think Jerry Jeudy is about to have a massive season, and I would say draft him in fantasy. Cortland Sutton is still competent, but he's not super explosive anymore. They drafted Marvin Mims, who could be interesting. I really like Tim Patrick. So they've got enough receivers. If Russell Wilson can just be competent, move a little bit more, trust his legs a little bit more, scramble a little bit more, and then just play within the scheme that Peyton gives him, this should be a top 20 offense. They've got enough talent. They've got a good enough offensive line. They've got enough balance to be able to do that. At number 19, the Atlanta Falcons offense. The Falcons offense ranks at number 19 because I think they do one thing so elite that it just controls the game, dictates the pace, and I love offenses like that. I love offenses that can control a football game. It's not going to show up necessarily in points per game or yards per game, but it's going to show up when you watch the game. That's the thing with Atlanta. Because they're going to be so good at running the football, so efficient at running the football, that their passing game is not really going to matter. But as long as Desmond Ridder can just make enough plays and maybe a few more explosive downfield throws than Marcus Mariota made, because I don't think he's going to be able to run the way Marcus Mariota did, then I do believe this offense could be extremely tough to stop because they're so unique. And I give them a lot of credit for that. Arthur Smith's a great run game designer. They do a lot of things that a lot of teams simply are not prepared for. Bijan Robinson, I think, is going to have a massive rookie season. Their offensive line, I ranked as the second best in football. And it begins with the running game. Kyle Pitts can't be worse than last year, right? Drake London had a really, really good rookie season, and I think he can only improve from there. And I actually don't hate the other receivers. Like, I think the Mac Hollins pickup, for example, is actually kind of solid. So the Atlanta Falcons and Jonnu Smith, can't forget about him. He performs with Arthur Smith calling the plays. So I do believe Atlanta is just so good running the ball. They could be the best running team in the league, that they are going to be a top 20 offense this year. At number 18, the New York G-Men. The Giants offense, you could argue, could be slightly higher. The tough thing with the Giants offense is they don't have a lot of special players on their offense, but what's special about it is the scheme. Brian Daboll sets up all his playmakers to make plays, creates yards after catch. He has a great feel for play calling, for the timing, and then they're able to execute that throughout the game. Brian Daboll does not call the plays in New York, but he dictates the offense, and then they deliver. And I believe Daniel Jones is going to have another very good year. I don't know if it's going to lead to the same team success, but I believe Daniel Jones is going to put up a ton of numbers, ton of stats. I think he's going to throw for more yards. I think he's going to run like the animal he is. Saquon Barkley is even healthier entering this season, which is going to be a lot of fun to watch as long as he signs that contract. Their offensive line should be better based on Evan Neal just improving entering year 2. Potentially some of those young guys in the interior helping out. And then Darren Waller could be the special weapon that they needed, but I don't know. I can't rely on him to stay healthy. But when he's on the field, he could be that guy. I really love the addition of Paris Campbell. I think he could be their number 1 receiver. I wouldn't bank on it, but I would place a small bet on that happening. Isaiah Hodgins is very solid. Darius Slay, the same thing, but they're totally different players. Hodgins inside, Slayton down the field. So I really like a lot of the pieces. It's kind of a quantity over quality type of offense with really good coaching. And I think as long as Daniel Jones can play the way he did last year, this will be a very, very solid offense in 2023. At number 17, the New England Patriots offense. The Patriots offense could be the most surprising unit this year. They could be the most improved offense this year. And you don't even have to talk about what they did adding Juju Smith-Schuster and getting rid of Jacoby Myers, adding Mike Gesicki and getting rid of Jonnu Smith. Both, in my opinion, slight upgrades, especially Mike Gesicki. The biggest thing that's going to help the New England Patriots offense is the coaching. Not only Bill O'Brien, who is going to be so much better than Matt Patricia, who is easily the worst offensive coordinator in football, but a lot of people that aren't Patriots fans don't know that Matt Patricia was actually the offensive line coach and the offensive coordinator. And he was awful at both. So Mac Jones was not prepared at all for any checks or balances at the line of scrimmage, for any type of audibles with the offensive line or in protections. And Bill O'Brien is a master at that, dating back to his days with Tom Brady. And that's going to improve the offense, in my opinion, the most. Allowing Mac Jones to be what he's best at, which is a cerebral quarterback at the line of scrimmage, making his decisions pre-snap and being accurate with the delivery of the football. Devontae Parker, they clearly like, who they signed to an extension. They're still trying to get D-Hop in the building, which if he was on the team right now, I'd probably rank them inside the top 15. Kendrick Bourne should have a bit of a bounce back season. Hunter Henry is still there. Ramondre Stevenson is an animal. And they have a lot of different type of players. Juju, no real fantastic standout star other than Ramondre Stevenson, but a lot of good quality NFL playmakers. And if Mac Jones can take that step forward like I expect him to, and the offensive line can be improved simply through the coaching, this offense will surprise most of the NFL fan base. At number 16, the New York Jets, Jets offense. Aaron Rodgers' offense with the Jets, I think, might be slightly overrated, but I think it will be good enough to win games. I don't think that Aaron Rodgers will have to be relied upon as much as he was in Green Bay to win a lot of games. I think this is a team that wants to run the ball. I think this is a team that wants to play defense. And yeah, the Packers ran the ball a lot and they were very good at it, but the Jets have a much better defense than the Packers did, and there's no Devontae Adams here, but Garrett Wilson could be one of the next stars at the wide receiver position. They don't have a lot of elite players other than Garrett Wilson, but they've got a lot of solid, right? Is Corey Davis still going to be around? If he is, I think he could be low-key a big contributor here. The tight end position, they got a couple pros in Conklin and Uzoma. They have Alan Lazard. They have Randall Cobb. Obviously, great rapport with Aaron Rodgers there. Mecole Hardman provides the speed to the receiving core. But Garrett Wilson will be the go-to guy, and Breece Hall will be the engine. The biggest question is the offensive line, and maybe even bigger than the offensive line, staying healthy. Because if they stay healthy, I think they'll be solid enough, is the play calling. You bring in Hackett, who was a disaster. We talked about it with the Broncos. And I don't love this staff overall. I think that's going to hurt them a lot, more than really their players will. I would say if this had let's say they had Sean McVay, I would probably rank them inside the top 12 or top 10. Because I think their players are good enough. But when you combine kind of okay skill positions with bad play calling, it lowers my expectation, even if you have an all-time quarterback. At number 15, the Minnesota Vikings offense. The Vikings offense last year, I felt was really, really good. And I don't know if it always shows up in terms of statistically or efficiency-wise, but man, it just felt like every time they played at home, like they couldn't be stopped. It didn't matter who they were playing. They would at least have one half where they were just super explosive and unstoppable. We saw that in the Colts game in that comeback. We saw it in the Thanksgiving game against the Patriots defense. We even saw it for a brief moment in the Jets game. It didn't really matter. They played the Bills. They went to Buffalo. They put up a ton of points. Like, it didn't matter who they played. They put up points, man, and they put up explosive performances. And I think it's because Kirk Cousins is super underrated and super disrespected. And he's one of the smartest quarterbacks in football. And by the way, I'm loving that quarterback series so far that he is on. And I'm really becoming a fan of Kirk Cousins. Like, I've always kind of liked Kirk Cousins. He's been okay in my books. But really appreciating him with the dad energy. I really like it a lot. The offensive line is, I think, improved and improving. I think Christian Darrisaw is elite. And I think O'Neal is very solid. The interior is a bit suspect, and they maybe provide Kirk Cousins with too many hits. Dalvin Cook's no longer there, which I think will hurt the running game, but Alexander Mattison has proven that he can be explosive as a running back. And TJ Hawkinson for a full season is going to be very fun. Jordan Addison, I think, could be about as good as Adam Thielen last year. And Justin Jefferson's the best receiver in the game, and they still got KJ Osborne. So overall, this is still a very good offense. I struggled putting them at 15 because I actually think they're better than 15, but I think as a team, they're not going to be as good this year, and I think that's going to hurt the way that we look at the offense, the way they kind of feel in our eyes. So they're really going to have to score a lot. They're really going to have to win shootouts this year, just as they did last year, and it's just hard to replicate what they were able to do last season. At number 14, the Las Vegas Raiders offense. The Raiders offense is probably the most overlooked in the NFL entering 2023. When people talk about the best offenses in the NFL, I don't think they give enough respect for the potential of the Raiders offense. The biggest reason I don't have the Raiders offense higher is because of Jimmy Garoppolo's availability. I don't have a lot of faith in Jimmy G playing 17 games. I just have not seen it very many times. So on that basis, I have to balance my expectations of their potential and their ceiling with also their floor. So that's why they're a little lower than maybe some people would have them, or I would have them if I knew they had a more stable quarterback position. But overall, this is the team that had the leading rusher in the NFL in Josh Jacobs. They can really run the ball and move the ball that way. And I think they're going to be better as a passing team because they have a quarterback that understands the system better, more in depth, deeper, and has an understanding of where to go with the football, how to get rid of it quickly, and then how to navigate the pocket as well. I think the protection is underrated. I do like the offensive line, specifically Colton Miller. I think Illuminor was underrated last year. And the interior was really good in the run game. They have some young players that will improve. The receiving core, I think, is better than last year. When you added Jacoby Myers to this mix with Hunter Renfrow and Devontae Adams, that's extremely promising. You've got Michael Mayer out of the second round who can do a little bit of everything at tight end, but they also added an Austin Hooper to the mix as well, who's a very solid chain mover. So I think the Raiders got a lot of pieces, a lot of balance. They can pass, they can run 2 tight end formations, 3 receiver formations, I formations, a lot of different stuff, whatever McDaniels wants to do, who is one of the best play callers in football. So I got the Raiders at 14. At number 13, the Seattle Seahawks offense. The Seahawks offense should definitely see some improvement this year, even though they were very surprising last year. Geno Smith was a lot better than we thought he would be. And Geno Smith, I think, will have a part 2 to last year. Because he's got DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith and Jigba at wide receiver. That is arguably the strongest trio of receivers in the NFL. It's at least in the conversation. And then you also add on Noah Fant to the tight end position, and a pretty deep tight end position overall. A very young offensive line, especially at tackle, which should improve, you would think, entering year 2. Kenneth Walker, who's an absolute touchdown waiting to happen. This offense is deeper than last year, better, more explosive than last year on paper. They just got to go out there and execute. And they've got very underrated play calling as well. So I think the Seahawks are going to have an explosive offensive season in 2023. At number 12, the Dallas Cowboys offense. Really, ever since Dak Prescott became their quarterback, and maybe even before that when Tony Romo was healthy most of the time, Cowboys have had a good offense basically every season. It's been more so the defense at times that has been up and down, but the offense typically has been very good. Last year, I felt it was weaker than usual, mostly because Dak Prescott was injured, and then he even came back and was a bit rusty, and they were a little bit of a roller coaster. There were games where they were super awesome, like Jacksonville or like the Tampa wildcard game. But there were other games where you're like, what? Like the Washington game. Even the Eagles game, I thought they played fantastic. Like there were games where they were up, there were games they were down. And I feel like Dallas could be a little the same this year, but I think they've got more talent at wide receiver, bringing in Brandon Cooks, who's going to be a very nice veteran, reliable number 2 who can stretch the field and open up the rest of the offense, which I really felt they needed that type of receiver to help CeeDee Lamb. Michael Gallup could also be a lot better this year. I think the only thing that really bugs me, there's 2 things. Dalton Schultz no longer being there when I felt like they could have probably re-signed him. I understand they like their tight end position, even though they're kind of unknowns. And they don't really feel like Dalton Schultz is irreplaceable by any means, but he was very reliable and had a great connection with Dak Prescott. And that bugs me that they didn't bring him back. They don't have the 1-2 punch in Zeke and Pollard anymore, although I would argue giving Pollard more touches is probably better at this point. The offensive line bugs me. I'm not going to lie. The offensive line bugs me. Like, I feel like their depth isn't there. Like, they've got a really strong starting 5, but we've seen Tyron Smith get injured a lot, and that's kind of unreliable, and that could kind of hurt them and be an Achilles heel for them. I could certainly see that happening. And if Dak's under pressure, you know he doesn't perform as well. But when Dak's on, man, this could be an unstoppable unit. So it's a tough balance because you lose Kellen Moore, but how much of a loss was that? Was it a big loss? Was it a small loss? Like, we'll have to see. So the Dallas Cowboys, I think, could be better than this, but I don't think they'll be much worse than this. I think at the very least, they're a top half offense in 2023. At number 11, the Cleveland Browns offense. This one is very projection based because Deshaun Watson, which I feel like I put that caveat in every Cleveland Browns ranking or video, but it's facts. It's the truth. But when you look at this offense, there are not many offenses that are more stacked than the Cleveland Browns. They have Nick Chubb, who some people think is the best running back in the NFL. At least from a pure rushing standpoint, they do. Offensive line, really darn good, especially in the run game. They are a run, play-action based team, and I've even heard maybe Stefanski will loosen it up a little bit and they'll pass more, given that they have Deshaun Watson now. It would make sense because they did add Elijah Moore. They added Elijah Moore to Amari Cooper, to Donovan Peoples-Jones, who had a pretty good year last year, David Njoku, who I am a big fan of. So this has all the pieces to be super explosive, super balanced, and super difficult to stop. I feel like they could be the offense where sometimes They're running the ball down your throat. Sometimes if Deshaun Watson's on his game, he's just torching you down the field with explosive pass after explosive pass. I feel like they'll be a really good screen team. And I just think they're going to be so tough because they can attack you from all different angles in all different approaches, run or pass. So I have the Browns at number 11. Entering the top 10, at number 10, the Detroit Lions. The Lions offense from a talent perspective, I don't think it's a better unit than some of the ones I've already ranked. But based on their production from 2022, based on their balance, the way their offensive line performs and allows them to be very competent in the running and passing game, protecting Jared Goff to be successful. And then once they get Jameson Williams back, I do think they're going to take that next step forward as a super explosive passing team, because without Jameson Williams currently on the depth chart, they look a little bare on the shelf. Like, they don't have TJ Hawkinson anymore at tight end. So their tight end position, although they did draft Laporta, you have to question a rookie, because usually rookies at tight ends are not very good. Like, they're not super productive, I should say. They could be good, but kind of more efficient than effective, I would say. Then you have St. Brown, who's kind of that chain mover, but not the explosive downfield guy. Josh Reynolds is fine, right? Marvin Jones will get the job done, but it's not going to be any difference makers there. So it's really going to come down to early in the year until they get Jameson back, where they're running the ball and they're setting everything up off of David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. And Jahmyr Gibbs gives them something that I don't think they've had. A guy that can be like DeAndre Swift, probably more consistent, and his route tree and his ability to run routes and win matchups out of the backfield is even better than DeAndre Swift, and I think it's going to give them a great ceiling and a great safety blanket as well, kind of like Alvin Kamara does for the Saints. So I think the Lions with Ben Johnson, great play calling, great balance, very good offensive line, a quarterback that runs the system to a T. And once they get all their weapons back, they will be very difficult to stop, both in the pass and the running game, for their second year in a row. At number 9, the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers come in at number 9. This is the unit that has no excuse to not be in the top 10 this year after having a less than stellar performance last year. A lot of people looked at their offense last year as, entering the year at least, a top 10 unit, as you should have with Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen, and Mike Williams and Austin Eckler. You should, right? But last year, the offensive line obviously got hurt. Rashawn Slater specifically, he will be back this year. I think that really upgrades them massively, having that protection at the left tackle spot. Some of these guys should improve this year, especially Zion Johnson, last year's first round pick. Then you've got Corey Linsley, who's a really good center. So the offensive line looks in really good shape. I would say the best shape it's been in the Herbert era. Tight end position is passable with Gerald Everett. He actually had probably a career year last year and provided to be a very good kind of contested target for Justin Herbert. And that's really all they have, right? They've got Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, contested catch guys. Quentin Johnson is their answer for that explosiveness. Can he be that guy that creates yards after catch, gets vertical down the field, scares defenses? Maybe. We'll see. I wasn't the biggest fan coming out. He looked too much like N'Keal Harry to me, but he does got a gear that N'Keal Harry didn't have. So hopefully he proves me wrong. Now, Austin Eckler is an absolute stud. He's a fantasy monster, but the running game has actually been a little underwhelming the last couple of years. And Kellen Moore is not going to fix that, which is kind of my concern. But what Kellen Moore will do is he'll put the ball in the hands of their best player even more, which is Justin Herbert. So I actually feel they're going to be more productive. I think they're going to pass for a ton of yards. I think they're going to score a ton of points because they're very pass heavy. But I don't think they're going to have as much balance as they typically have had with Austin Eckler. So a lot of weapons, very good quarterback, should have a healthier offensive line. This is without a doubt a top 10 offense. At number 8, the Baltimore Ravens offense. The Baltimore Ravens offense, I could see some being a little bit surprised by this ranking and being like, whoa, the Ravens are super overrated. And there's going to be that crowd because, of course, There's just people out there that don't like OBJ, and there's people out there that don't like Lamar Jackson, so just gotta live with it. But the Baltimore Ravens, pretty much every year they have Lamar Jackson, they're very hard to stop. In every game that he plays, no matter who's around him, it doesn't matter. They're hard to stop because of Lamar Jackson. Period. Because he can run around, he can run for 100 yards in any given game, he can pass for 400 in another game. He is so dynamic that he forces your defense to play a certain way, to rush a certain way, to be prepared for a certain type of running game. And from there, that's going to set up J.K. Dobbins and Gus the Bus to be successful. They've got a very good offensive line. I think one of the best in football. Mark Andrews is one of the top tight ends in the league. Isaiah Likely is a very good number 2 tight end who they can move around as a chess piece. And the biggest improvements they've made at wide receiver and offensive coordinator. They bring in Todd Monken from Georgia, had some moments in Cleveland, Tampa Bay, known for more of a passing game, but has proven in Georgia and other places that he can get a run game going as well. And I think it's going to work for Baltimore. I think they're going to be more explosive. I think they're going to be more consistent. I think they're going to be less reliant on their defense because they're going to pass more and they're going to score more points. With Odell there, with Zay Flowers there, who I think is going to have a big rookie year. They added Nelson Aguilar. They have Rashad Bateman back. And Devin Duvernay as well. They've got 4 or 5 competent receivers. They haven't had that type of thing since Lamar's gotten there. They have so much more depth in terms of weaponry that it should make them a much better offense. And I think they're going to be one of the best in football this year. At number 7, the Jacksonville Jags offense. Trevor Lawrence now has a number 1 outside perimeter target to toss the rock to. And his name is Calvin Ridley. Do not forget the name Calvin Ridley because he has returned to the NFL. And I think he's going to have a big year with Trevor Lawrence. That addition makes Jacksonville a lot more scary offensively. Before, you were kind of basing everything off of the middle of the field. Protecting the middle of the field. You got to worry about Travis Etienne running the ball or catching the ball. You got to worry about the tight end, Evan Ingram. And you got to worry about Christian Kirk, the slot receiver. But now, Trevor Lawrence with that rocket cannon for an arm, he can stress you out vertically, perimeter with Zay Jones and with Calvin Ridley. He can attack you in the middle of the field with those 3 playmakers. And I think their running game is going to be better. I think Etienne's about to have a huge year. The only thing I worry about is the offensive line. Of course, Robinson will be, I think, suspended early in the year, so they're going to have to rely on some younger, unproven tackles. But as long as they can survive that, you've got a very good quarterback who's getting better, an improved receiving core with a couple number 1 quality type players, a really dynamic running back, an awesome play caller in Doug Peterson, who always seems to have a great game plan for every opponent. So I have them at number 7 on my list. The 6th best offense in the NFL today is the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers are my number 6. I think you can make an argument either way for them to be higher or lower, really depending on your faith in Brock Purdy. Because I think if Brock Purdy is the quarterback the whole year and he's healthy, they're probably top 5 offense. But if they're missing Brock Purdy and there's more Sam Darnold or Trey Lance, obviously they will not have the same ability to score points. Now that being said, they have the best play caller in the NFL in Kyle Shanahan, especially when it comes to the run game. Christian McCaffrey could have a MVP type season where he catches 80 passes and he rushes for 1,200 yards. That could certainly happen, and they could win 14 games, and everyone is just like, this is the Marshall Faulk of 2023. You've got George Kittle, who's the most complete tight end in all of football. You have Brandon Ayuk. You have Deebo Samuel, who's an absolute yak monster. You have Jennings, a chain mover. You have a lot to work with, okay? And the offensive line's got Trent Williams. He's a wall. So this team has it all. They've got the skill positions. They've got a awesome left tackle. a decent enough offensive line supporting that left tackle, and a decent enough quarterback that can run the system. So I think if Purdy plays, they're going to be more explosive than they've ever been with Jimmy Garoppolo in 2023. Entering the top 5, at number 5, the Miami Dolphins offense. The Dolphins are my number 5. Last year, they exploded onto the scene. Tyreek Hill went from Kansas City to Miami and looked even better in Miami, which I don't even know how that's possible, but he did. He put up ludicrous numbers. Jalen Waddle benefited from that. Tyreek Hill took all the coverage. Jalen Waddle feasted. I think he had the most yards per catch of anyone because of the space that Tyreek created. They don't have a lot of depth at playmaker besides those two guys, but those guys are so dynamic and so special that you can be passable everywhere else and you'll be fine, really. The running back position has some depth. They drafted A-Chain, who they like. They could bring Dalvin Cook into the building. I could see it, but Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson can get the job done in this system. Ran by Mike McDaniel, which I think has a pretty good drop back passing game. A really interesting outside zone running game that I think should improve this year. An awesome RPO game, I think the best in football. And then one of the most dangerous offenses because of their receiving core. Tua is a really good short passer and a really good quick game passer, and he has a special skill in that regard. So that makes them a tough offense to stop, where you have to worry about the speed of those receivers, but you also have to play close to the line of scrimmage because of how fast Tua gets rid of the ball. So they're a tough offense to figure out. We'll see how McDaniel adjusts to what the defenses adjust to him when they're adjusting. But overall, I think they're a top 5 offense, and they could be even better if Tua stays healthy the entire year. At number 4, the Buffalo Bills offense. The Bills offense was actually better than I thought they were statistically last year. And I think a lot of people forgot that the Bills were like the best team in football for like at least 10 weeks last year. And it took them a while, I want to say, to actually drop a game. And I think they only had one loss for like a while. But the Buffalo Bills were super explosive last year. Gabriel Davis was hitting big plays. Stephon Diggs was doing Stephon Diggs things. And life was awesome. And then Josh Allen hurt his elbow. And they weren't quite the same, but they were still pretty explosive. We saw the Miami playoff game. We saw them near the end of the year against New England. We saw what they were able to do. And I think with Josh Allen being healthier, you've always got to worry about his cannon where he can make every throw. He can get outside the pocket. He's dangerous there. You got to worry about those ad-lib plays, and then he can run it as well on design runs. I think the running back position will be improved with Damian Harris as that sledgehammer in combination with James Cook, the kind of elusive guy. The offensive line has more depth, but did it get better? That's my biggest question. I think the reason they're not my top 3 is because of the offensive line. And then they add Dalton Kincaid in the first round to Dawson Knox at tight end, which will give them different looks and should help them improve their running game with different personnel packages. They are my number 4. At number 3, the Cincinnati Bengals offense. The Bengals offense may not statistically be a top 3 offense. They might not put up the most yards or the most points, but what I love about this offense is every time they're playing in a big game, they make the big plays at the right time. They always provide a very good game plan, and they can run or pass the ball when they really need to. What I will also say about this offense that is better than it was before is the offensive line. I think Orlando Brown Jr. is going to raise the floor of this offense. We've seen with this offense how explosive they can be, what they can be at their best because of Burrow, Higgins, and Chase. But the offensive line will provide a safer, higher floor, which I think will create more consistency because we have seen them have some stinkers because of the protection. I don't think that will happen as much in 2023. I love how Zach Taylor allows Joe Burrow to sit back, play in the shotgun, read the defense, be very kind of Peyton Manning-esque and be very still read out what a defense is doing from a coverage standpoint, and pick his poison. I think they really clicked near the end of the year last year, and the only reason they were stopped last year is because their offensive line got injured. I really think the Bengals have a complete offense with an awesome quarterback, a great receiving core, a play caller, and an offensive coordinator that understands what they do best, and as long as Joe Mixon can be competent at running back, they'll still have a good running game as well. They are one of the most balanced teams in football at number 3. At number 2, I have the Kansas City Chiefs offense. Now, I think some Chiefs fans will be a bit upset given how productive they were last year, and I would not argue that the Chiefs offense from a statistical standpoint and a production standpoint last year was the best offense in football. But this isn't only about 2022. This is also about 2023, right? This is a 2023 list. So part of my problem with the Chiefs is they obviously have new tackles, and they don't have Juju anymore, and they didn't really look to replace him. So Juju was a very big part of their offense. I would say he was their best receiver last year. So that's a loss, in my opinion. He made a huge play in the Super Bowl near the end. Travis Kelce's Travis Kelce. Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. Andy Reid is a wizard. So you've got that. You've got a really awesome, probably the best interior offensive line in football. And they are deceptively good running the ball when they want to be. We saw that in the Super Bowl, and I give them a lot of credit for that, and Andy Reid for sticking with the run. It feels like whenever Andy Reid has time to prepare or time to adjust, he is able to do so, and Mahomes makes magic out of nothing. But their receiving core is concerning. They're relying a lot on Kadarius Toney, who's extremely unreliable. Sky Moore, we saw nothing out of him last year. Watson is a special teamer. Valdez-Scantling is a one-trick pony. They just don't have a lot at receiver, which is why they're number 2, despite having the best tight end, the best quarterback, and arguably the best play caller in the NFL, with a pretty good offensive line as well. But my number 1 offense is the Philadelphia Eagles offense. The reason the Eagles are my number 1 offense is I think they were the most unstoppable unit last year, and they can play left-handed better than anybody in football. And we saw this in the Super Bowl. The Chiefs sold out to stop the run, and they did it. But they also gave up a ton of yards, a ton of plays, and a ton of points. And really the only reason they stopped the Eagles was because the Eagles stopped themselves. That was really it. Let's be honest. They can attack you with the quarterback run. They can attack you with the running back run. They can win the line of scrimmage and protect the quarterback to throw the ball down the field. They have a pretty good RPO package. They have a pretty good screen game. They can do everything. They can throw intermediate, deep, short. Jalen Hurts is not Patrick Mahomes, but he is a rare quarterback, and he's a power runner that's also proven to be a pretty competent passer, and I think he's improving in that facet. They've got 2 number 1 receivers. They've got better depth at receiver this year. They've got a really good tight end, and they've got, I think, an improved running back group. So while the Chiefs kind of declined a little bit, I thought the Eagles improved. And I just really love the idea of the Eagles' balance offensively, where they're the best running team in football and they're one of the best passing teams in football, and they can beat you either way. That is why they're my top offense entering 2023. I hope you enjoyed my offense rankings entering 2023. If you did, Gronk, spike the like button and subscribe for more NFL rankings just like this. More coming. Peace.